Alrighty. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today for our Work From Home Wednesday webinar, No Profit in Profiteering. Before we get started, just a couple quick announcements. The first announcement, you may have noticed that you're currently in listen-only mode. This is to ensure that there's less background noise, easier to hear me. However, you're still welcome to ask questions at any point during today's presentation. I personally adore questions. They make me very happy. Second announcement, you will be receiving as part of the follow-up email to today's session a copy of today's slides, including all the links that I'll be referencing for all the materials in today's presentation. There will also be a link to the recording for today's session, so if you get an important client call, it's quite all right. Finally, today's session, just as a reminder, is our informational webinars. We do have CLE webinars that are a part of Fastcase. Those are offered on Thursday afternoons, and you can sign up for them at fastcase.com/support. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Today we're talking about a topic related to our current situation, but it also has play in more common times as well. So some of the materials I'll be referencing will hopefully be familiar. Others of them are just pertaining to our current situation, including our current presidential orders and our current legislation. Alrighty. So, especially considering some feedback I got yesterday, I wanted to ensure that we were all starting off on the same foot with the same definition. So you'll have to forgive me for quoting from Black's Law Dictionary, but I figured we'd start off with the basic definition of profiteering, just again to make sure we're on the same foot. So profiteering, again, is defined as taking advantage of unusual or exceptional circumstances to make excessive profits. So the word profiteering was the commonly used term for pirates back in the English Age of Sail, which explains the picture that you see on the page right now. But more commonly in legal terms, it's used in this day and age when someone uses a particular scarcity, whether due to an emergency, whether artificial or natural disaster, or war, or something of that nature, someone takes advantage of the scarcity of a product to drive extremely high profits. So this is not just plain old markup. This is usually defined as a profit so unconscionable as to be, well, unconscionable or unacceptable per societal standards. Common synonyms, just in case, again, just to make sure we're all on the same foot. Profiteering, price gouging, supply hoarding, all of those are currently used terms to mean the same situation. And in our current situation, you've probably seen the news articles, you've probably heard it, but there are situations of profiteering occurring currently. Minor examples of this happen all the time just before predictable disasters. So things such as when it's about to snow, you'll suddenly notice that there's not a single jar of peanut butter or a roll of toilet paper in the entirety of the grocery store. Similarly, especially as the situation began developing under our current COVID-19 social distancing situation, there have been several products which I'm sure you've noticed have been in scarce supply. Now, it really depends on what region you're in as well as the demographics of the region as to what supplies are currently in this status. And some of them have been in this particular scarcity situation, and then demand or has driven enough supply, enough manufacturers have been able to step into the gap as to alleviate it. But that's not necessarily the case with all the supplies. Depending on your area, some areas are still a little short on toilet paper, for example. So a recent egregious example, and just again to make sure we're all on the same page, this particular one was advertised pretty widely, but a pair of brothers who drove a grand total apparently of 1,300 miles to buy every single bottle, no matter what size it was, of hand sanitizer, just as the regulations and rules were coming out regarding social distancing, the various gubernatorial orders. They literally cleaned out all of the sanitizers in half of Tennessee and a fair chunk of Kentucky. So this particular situation resulted in vast numbers of people who would ordinarily be able to get supplies, particularly useful to our current situation, being unable to. And then not just the scarcity of supplies was considered egregious, but the amount of profit that they were seeking off of the materials they were purchased for resale was also fairly large. Depending on the size of the bottle, it was somewhere between 20 and 40 times what they had initially paid. So quite a considerable markup. Now, this isn't supply hoarding per se, because in supply hoarding, the materials are not returned to the general circulation. They are reserved or stashed for the use of one particular individual, group of individuals, or entity. This, though, would be considered to be an example of price gouging, where because the supply has not met the demand, the amount sought for every single item in this particular example was just egregiously high. So I'm just going to focus on the various types of responses that we're seeing. I'm just going to touch a little bit on the international response. Each state and even each major city or each major locality is tackling this issue differently. So some localities are not tackling it at all. Other localities are having strict pricing regulation, depending on their form of government, to the point where there has not been even a little bit of profit permitted on supplies that are necessary for the situation. So there have been examples out of, for example, Russia and various Eastern European countries where the price is pretty much the same as it's been say in the fall of last year, where there was no significant demand and the pricing remains the same. However, this is not preventing a black market in these areas. There is still considerable exchange of goods and other materials as a result of this. So it appears internationally that even a strict price control on the major supports or major suppliers of these goods is still resulting in price gouging, just not publicly, privately. The response that you see on the page right now, this is from Médecins Sans Frontières, or in English, Doctors Without Borders, and this is their international condemnation of supply hoarding and price gouging, especially of materials that have multiple purposes in the health and sanitation areas. So things like hoarding of sanitizers that are necessary to treat other medical situations, hoarding of medicines that have multiple purposes, things of that nature. One of the unforeseen side effects of price gouging and profiteering is that it can drive up the cost of supplies that would normally be available to treat other situations. So this type of profiteering and price gouging is causing unforeseen ramifications with these other treatable diseases and with these other medical situations, causing secondary complications. Domestically, the major order, or what everybody's considering to be the major order on this particular topic, is actually Executive Order 13,910, or the Executive Order on Preventing Hoarding of Health and Medical Resources to Respond to the Spread of COVID. Now, this particular executive order was issued towards the end of March. So we've been under this particular order a little bit more than a month and a half now. And it is actually a fairly short order as these things go, but cites to a couple of specific authorities, which again are particular authorities that have been thrown around a lot during this crisis, during this situation. The Defense Production Act, 50 U.S.C. 4501, is the major source of authority cited in the presidential executive order, and it gives the president authority to name items that are essential to the defense of the United States and to classify them or to take actions to protect their production, supply, demand, and distribution of those items. Now, just a small side note, it's very uncommon for the Defense Production Act to be referenced in any situation that is not a named or specific war. So this is an unusual application of this act and might be something that will be litigated further in the future. There's also the general site of authority, the 3 U.S.C. 301. Everybody should be familiar with that. That's just the usual ability of the president to delegate enforcement of various actions. And the specific focus of this particular executive order, as per its text, is to the prevention of hoarding or stockpiling of health and medical supplies. It does not lay out any specific goals, targets, enforcement actions, or anything of that nature, just a general delegation of authority. It does, however, specify that further definitions of the supplies in question are forthcoming. Which, of course, leads us to the definition that was mentioned in the presidential order and issued 2 days later. This is the definition of health and medical supplies from HHS, specifically citing or referencing the presidential order. And as I mentioned before, the slides will be coming with all of the links here, so you don't have to copy them down furiously. But the order is actually a longer document, of course, than the initial presidential order. And this definition focuses on medical and sanitizing materials necessary for the treatment of COVID-19. As its authority, it has, of course, the presidential order, and it references 3 CFR sections, the ones you see on the screen right now. This definition is actually, again, fairly general. It does not say specifically that any of the materials referenced are, in fact, solutions or specific treatments for COVID-19 and coronavirus. It does not specifically state categories of materials or definitions of how you could tell which materials are necessary to the treatment. So it's still a very general order, although, again, we do have those specific 3 CFR sections that are defined. But of the 3 CFR sections that are defined and are specifically specified as regarding sanitation, only one of the sections that's mentioned actually has anything to do with sanitization, and that specific section is regarding a device that's used to sanitize a particular medical device, specifically endoscopes. So actually all 3 of the CFR sections that were referenced by this order as relating to sanitization of goods actually don't reference really the sanitization thing that most people are thinking of when it comes to goods in the marketplace. They are all medical devices. They are all being used for treatment of patients, but they don't actually have any definitions that could be used either in a legal context or just as a reference for someone who's in business trying to avoid running afoul of the presidential order and possible later prosecution. So the only context we have is just a line that's in the actual definition, or that's in that definition from HHS, which simply says other sanitizing and disinfecting products suitable for use in a clinical setting. So what does that leave us for the definition as to goods that fall under this particular category? That's actually a pretty good question. There is no specific guidance or any further specific guidance coming out of HHS on this topic. So it appears to be up to the prosecutor or other entity that is involved in enforcing this particular action or this particular order. So let's take a look at what the response has been from the Department of Justice. There's been several internal notes and guidance issued by the Department of Justice in this coronavirus social distancing time period. A number of them are related to workflow processes and other issues internal to the Department of Justice. But there are 2 major memos that are highlighted on the screen right now. March 19th, which predates the presidential order, but specifies some of the actions that the Department of Justice is going to be taking in regards to hoarding or other tip situations regarding the current social distancing situation, and the March 24th response to the presidential order. So just looking at the March 19th one really quickly, this predates the presidential order, but is the Department of Justice's official guidelines or guidance as to how they're going to deal with tips or concerns or other issues relating to COVID-19 or coronavirus during this time period. Mostly it deals with how the Department of Justice is going to receive and route information regarding coronavirus tips, including the designation of one of their already existing programs or hotlines, the National Center for Disaster Fraud, as the focus or the route for individuals who are external to the Department of Justice to provide information. So again, this is just saying that the National Center for Disaster Fraud is going to be the funnel or the pipeline for any complaints or tips regarding coronavirus fraud. And this includes, or the memo specifically says this will include, issues relating to price gouging and supply hoarding. The other major memo that is concerning this particular issue is the one from March 24th. This one specifically cites to the presidential order, of course, and specifically says that they are going to abide by the definitions issued by Health and Human Services that we saw a moment ago. So again, we have no specific definition. The only definition referenced is, again, the one from Health and Human Services, and no specified amounts to be considered for prosecution. So under the current guidance, as far as the memoranda are concerned, there is no specific definition nor any specific amount that is to be considered supply hoarding or that is to be considered a supply that could be considered under this particular presidential order. So tentatively, as little as 5 units of a particular item, maybe hand sanitizer, maybe toilet paper, could be considered an actionable response. But let's actually take a look at some of the response that there's been under these guidelines. One more memo to mention. This is also from March 24th. And this one, instead of being official guidance, is a memo to all of the AUSAs, guiding them as to how or what provisions coronavirus hoarding or price gouging could be prosecuted under. So it, of course, lays out the Defense Production Act we referenced before, specifically Sections 4512 and 4513. Those are the sections that state if something is related to the defense of the United States, it can be prosecuted. But it also references very specifically the antitrust law located at 15 U.S.C. 1, 2, and 14. It also references a number of other statutes depending on the method that the price gouging or supply hoarding is mentioned under. So for example, if the materials are being sent through the U.S. mail, of course mail fraud is a possibility. If the materials are being advertised online or transactions related to the price gouging are transacted online, then it mentions specifically wire fraud, things of that nature. So each of the pieces of guidance in this particular memo are referencing the means by which the actions or the conspiracy or fraud is being perpetrated, and is just specifying or guiding that the AUSA should evaluate the facts of the situation and pursue them under the current standards or statutes. So again, no new law here, just referencing the specific statutes recommended for consideration for various charges and prosecution of supply hoarding and price gouging. Now, of course, the authority to determine what charges or what sections these charges should be brought under remains in the hands of the AUSA for that particular jurisdiction. There is no recommendation for any size or level of prosecution that should be handled in a specific manner, and there's no particular guidance recommending or requiring that the AUSAs coordinate and have a consistent response. It is currently left up to the individual AUSA of that jurisdiction. Alrighty, so just talking a little bit about getting these various actions started. Regarding means of investigation, there was also a guidance memo issued, and this particular guidance was issued specifically by AUSA Posey, but there's other similar guidance that has been issued by other AUSAs in various jurisdictions in the United States. And these various memos are open memos to the public. So the first or most recommended method of initiating these various efforts or prosecution investigations include direct appeals for reporting by hospital workers. So if a hospital worker notices or has reason to notice an issue of supply hoarding, they are very highly encouraged to reach out to the AUSA for their jurisdiction. They're also guiding or collecting those tips from the NCDF hotline we mentioned earlier. And there's been several AUSAs who have issued orders for compliance to various resellers, eBay, Amazon, Mercari, entities of that nature. There is no external guidance to indicate that the AUSAs are requesting investigative assistance from any police entities. I'm sure that there are such efforts behind the scenes, but those have not been issued publicly on the DOJ website or through any memos that have been made public so far. And just to give you a couple of examples of recent federal prosecution on this issue, on the left, we have a lovely example, a gentleman who was in the Veterans Administration Medical Center who was there apparently for treatment for another issue, saw boxes of masks that were in storage there in a closet that was not locked, and helped himself, stealing hundreds of them at the time. This is just a recently issued prosecution about a month ago. No huge action's been taken on that case yet since the release, but again, just an example. On the right, this is an example of a ongoing, apparently, conspiracy to sell medical supplies, but that took a specific turn in the coronavirus direction because he managed to acquire apparently a supply of N95 masks. Those are the facial masks that have been in the news so much lately, and was selling them to various doctors. So this particular prosecution came as a result of a tip from a medical center, just like we saw on our previous source slide. And of course, looking at stuff that is pending in the various courts. Of course, the courts are observing social distancing. The number of cases in the courts at this time, whether filed or being actively prosecuted, is down in every jurisdiction. So this is resulting in a lot of delayed filing, a lot of standing orders regarding who can be present in various locations, things of that nature. However, there's a lot of cases that are getting started on the issue of price gouging. These are being pursued not just in a criminal sense, so not just Department of Justice or other prosecutorial actions, but also to a great deal by the original manufacturer or original source of the supplies. Specifically, these tend to be actions where there has been price gouging, but also trademark violation. So the original manufacturer is pursuing the trademark infringement and including a count regarding price gouging or unfair competition as part of their action. So the one that you see on the screen right now, this is from 3M regarding a reselling action that was being taken by an entity called Performance Supply. This particular action is very popular. Lots of people are referencing it, so I just figured I'd include that one for you. All right, so before we take a quick look at what the states are doing on this topic, it is important to note that beyond the various acts that have been already issued regarding coronavirus, there's also been some congressional action regarding price gouging and profiteering specifically. The common themes, and again, there's been several bills put forth. It's still very, very early in the bill-making process, so these have not been consolidated at this point into something that's more likely to be voted upon. These are still very preliminary stages for most of these actions, but the common themes for these bills include no unexpected windfalls from scarcity of resources. So again, even though a particular action could be acceptable or reasonable during a time of no scarcity. There seems to be a movement or an action towards defining an acceptable amount of profit. That is a very unusual course. It's very unlikely or unusual for Congress to say or specify any percentage or any amount that would be acceptable as profit. So this would be a very unusual action should these bills pass. And it looks like they are pursuing both a penalty approach and a percentage or interest approach on this action. And then the second theme that's common in these various bills that are being proposed are means of directing better cooperation between state and federal agencies, regarding also the possibility of funding initiatives or task force regarded to this type of issue. The bill that you see on the page right now has been put forward by Senator Booker, but there are, of course, other bills that are currently pending. So I do recommend, if you're interested in that you check out Congress.gov. There's a number of the bills that are available, the text of the bills, etc., available from that source as well. All right, so again, looking at the state level action, each state is proceeding as well on this issue. There's a number of state laws that would apply just as easily to price gouging or profiteering. The example that you see on the left, this one is from the New York City Attorney General. This particular one, Attorney General James, was regarding hand sanitizer and disinfectant sprays. And again, we're talking markups of somewhere in the vicinity of 10 times to 20 times the amount that that particular product would normally go for. And again, I just specify these as typical examples. The one on the right happens to be from Alaska. So again, coast to coast, north to south, it's happening everywhere. This particular one was again regarding those N95 masks we mentioned. And, but again, the markups on this particular example wasn't quite as high, but still making about $50 in profit per pack. That's again, just something to note. Again, there's no consistency in the amount of pricing that people are pursuing, and there's no consistency necessarily in the definitions or in the quantities that people are looking into as well. In both of these examples, when they're talking mass quantities, sometimes the mass quantity that they're referencing is 100 units. Sometimes it's thousands of units. So there's no particular threshold where you can say under this, it's not considered to be supply hoarding, over this it is. It's pretty much all over the map and all different definitions of products and quantities. Now, I mentioned before that there have been initiatives or demands upon various platforms, Amazon, eBay, Mercari, Etsy, all of the different locations where it's easy for an individual to sell product online. These actions or these initiatives are not per a particular statute or per a particular formula or regulation. Most of these requests appear, or at least what's been made publicly known, appear to be just individualized requests for action that can be taken on the part of the entity. What you're seeing on the page right now, these are the official public actions that Amazon and eBay have been taking or telling their customers and their individuals who are selling on their platforms. And this includes Amazon's slightly stricter response, where Amazon is specifically stating that they are looking for and have suspended accounts that have been accused of violating fair pricing policies. Amazon does have a very specific formulaic fair pricing algorithm. They don't share what the amounts are publicly, so it's hard to tell what the amount is, but they have a very specific one, and they are literally suspending all entities who hit that particular algorithmic response. As of recently, this is getting closer to 6,000 or 7,000 accounts of individuals who have been accused, according to that algorithm, of violating fair pricing. eBay's response, and both posting-wise and in practicality has been a lot less specific, but they're still also taking actions against specific sellers who are engaging in pricing behaviors that are unacceptable or who have continued to post items after receiving cease and desist orders or requests from the original manufacturer of the goods. And of course, there comes pushback to such actions as well. Most commonly, it's referenced as a right to sell. Specifically, people reference that in a situation where you have purchased a good, the right of first sale extinguishes the right of the distributor to control later sales. So this is brought up in situations similar to Amazon and eBay, where there's an internal policy of the platform that is preventing the seller from selling. And it also comes up in responses to lawsuits such as the 3M lawsuit that we saw a couple moments ago that is currently in process. There's a lot of case law on this. I do recommend that you check out or run a search in Fastcase at your leisure and check out some of the terms that are on the page right now. But there have been noted specific exceptions or doctrines restricting the first sale doctrine, and this includes material differences. So if there are material differences between the item that is sold by the manufacturer and the item in the resale market, this can include things such as quality control, methods, items that are damaged after first use, things of that nature. There's been found to be product confusion, trademark infringement. Materials in the secondary market are still subject, of course, to tariffs, inspections, and they're still subject to limitations from various acts, most notably the Defense Production Act, which we've been referring to this entire presentation. So again, a lot of restrictions on the right to sell or the first sale doctrine, but most specifically, the one that appears to be applied most is situations where the resale would perpetuate or encourage a fraud, confusion of a trademark, copyright confusion or not unfair use instead of fair use in the copyright field, and infringement on various patents, especially in circumstances where it's a component of a larger product. So there's lots of ways to stay up to date on these particular issues. I'd like to encourage you to take a look at some of the materials that are in Fastcase itself, beyond the presidential orders and the acts and the statutes that we've been referencing in the cases as well. I do encourage you to take a look at some of the leading thought on some of the experts that are out there. LexBlog is the single largest database of legal blogs in the United States, and you can access all of these blogs through Fastcase 7. And I mention this because there's been some really great scholarly work from some of the leading practitioners, and it's available for free. So you can just log in, take a look at it. But there's a lot of examples, including various introspections on the presidential orders, even more in-depth analysis of the Department of Health and Human Services memo that I just mentioned earlier, a lot of looks into past pandemic situations or past emergencies and the response 2 to 4 months after the incident or the emergency had completed and the resulting surge of litigation that occurred once the courts were available. So, you know, just a lot of great scholarly work on things that are going to occur likely once the courts get back up to speed and everybody is dealing with the fallout from this current situation. Couple more sources for information. Fastcase itself has a COVID-19 resource page. You might have seen it when you logged into Fastcase. It's pinned there in the center of the screen. Or if you're looking at our blog, it's available from there as well, and the address is on the page here. But this is our collection of materials on COVID-19 and coronavirus. So this includes resources from various jurisdictions, various cases, statutes, and other materials we've collected, dockets from currently pending cases, books and journal articles referencing employment situations and other materials that are relevant to COVID-19. All free. I encourage you to check that out. And one last source before I finish today, And that's Docket Alarm. So Docket Alarm is Fastcase's sister product. It interfaces with state and federal dockets to pull the rest of the docket information, so the pleadings, the motions, all of that fun stuff. You already saw actually a shot from Docket Alarm when I was referencing the 3M case earlier. But there's a automated search that you can run in Docket Alarm, so you don't even have to come up with the search phrasing yourself, so that you can see the latest legal actions that have taken place as a result of the COVID-19 or coronavirus situation, epidemic. So you can see those new materials, see the trends, see motions that have already been filed pertaining to these issues. A great resource so that you can stay up to date on what the latest is. All right, so before I let you go, I just want to remind you, you always have access to Fastcase customer support. We're available from 8 a.m. until 9 p.m. Eastern Time, Monday through Friday, and you can reach out to us any of the 3 ways that you see on the screen right here. I especially encourage you, if you have questions regarding search phrasing, that you check out the live chat function in the bottom corner of the screen when you're logged into Fastcase, because that connects you with all of us who are working remote at the moment, so that we can help you with your search phrasing, Boolean, all of that fun stuff. So very easy to get in touch with us and to get help, and we're always happy to help you with your reference questions or your tech questions. All right, so let me see if I've got any questions. Whoa, looks like I've got a couple. Hold on one second. So somebody did have a question. Is profiteering the same as profiting? Definitely not. Profiteering is, or if you are following some of the definitions, profiteering would be the illicit or unacceptable level of profit that you could receive. It's perfectly acceptable, both morally and legally, I suppose, to profit on the sale of an item. Profiteering would be the egregious amount of profit that could be obtained. We have a question. An example of a search that you could run to get the best info out of LexBlog. So an example, set your jurisdiction to LexBlog and add the terms that you're specifically interested in. So, and one example might be COVID-19 and hoard, or COVID-19 and gouging, or profiteering, whichever of the definitions. And in fact, I encourage you to add synonyms to your search just to ensure that you've gotten all of the materials, because there's no requirement that someone use the same synonym as you're thinking of. Do the standards for price gouging become more stringent during a national or state declared emergency? Not necessarily, and this is where I would say that fortunately or unfortunately, depending on your situation and the particular emergency in question, the results or the legislation and other actions that are taken as a result of that emergency frequently are tailored to that particular emergency. So it's very hard to generalize what standard or what materials will fall under such restrictions. So it's always a great idea to just keep an eye on the trends that are happening with the current emergency and make recommendations to your clients based off of what's currently been done. There's just no real predictive nature from the past emergencies. All right, one more question it appears. Does that mean that once a consumer purchases something from a store, that consumer is no longer covered by the first sale doctrine? Again, first sale doctrine can be a little bit, I don't want to say deceptive. I will say that first sale doctrine does extinguish certain rights of the manufacturer or the producer of the goods. So for example, if you purchase a book, that book is yours. So you can read it, you can leave it on a shelf, you can give it to a friend, you can sell it to your cousin, you can set it on fire. Although that last one, please do within the restrictions and regulations for your area and fires. That being said, There are restrictions on resellers that happen all the time. For example, a reseller is still subject to tax based off of the sale that they've made. They're still restricted by, again, export-import requirements. Certain types of goods are always inspected, things like medical supplies, etc. So there are restrictions on the sales in the secondary market as well. And one of those restrictions, or some of those restrictions, can be related to, again, the Defense Production Act and various statutes that deal with fraud. So do be careful about using the first sale doctrine as your argument, because it is subject to those limitations. Alrighty. It looks like I don't have any further questions. I'll still be online for a moment or two, so if you have any last-minute ones, please feel free. But I'd like to thank everyone for joining me for today for our session on No Profit in Profiteering, a look at the legislation and laws surrounding COVID-19, price gouging, profiteering, and supply hoarding. Thank you so much for joining me, and we hope that you'll join us next week as well. Keep an eye on your email for the sign-up link for next week, and I hope everyone has a wonderful afternoon.